Hi, and welcome to Disability Talk with Marianne. I am your host, Marianne Mahoney. I am a 25-year-old woman from the Boston area who was born with spina bifida. On this podcast, I interview people from the disability community to understand the issues that matter to people who live with a disability, care for people with disabilities, or work to support the needs of the community. In this episode, I speak to Kim Ho. How's it going?
Good. How are you? This is very exciting.
I know. I'm very excited to kick this off. My dad told me the idea, and I was like, hey, let's do it. So I was like, sure, let's start.
You're a brave person, never one to fear challenges.
Yes. So like I said, I do have a list of questions for you, and I will be taking notes. This is not a test for you or anything. I want you to know that. And just take your time answering a question, and if you don't know the answer to it, you could just say skip. And the most important rule is to have fun. Okay. All right. Number 1, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a speech-language pathologist, and I went into speech because I was really interested in working with people with disabilities who are non-speaking. And I'm an assistant clinical professor at Northeastern. I got to teach a few classes, and the funnest part, of course, is being able to supervise in the clinic where all the clients that I'm supervising have either, typically are autistic or have cerebral palsy and are using AAC devices, so communication devices for people who either need to supplement their speech or because they can't speak at all.
Thank you so much for that. And next questions. I know this answer, but have you had any other experiences working with people with disabilities other than Jabberwocky?
Yes, so I've started being a counselor at Jabberwocky when I was 16 years old, which is 36 years ago now. And the reason why I got involved with that was because my stepbrother, Ronnie, he was a camper there for many years. So when I was 10 years old, I would come and see the play. And then when I got a little older, two of the counselors came to visit my house to see Ronnie and encouraged me at 15 to try to be a counselor. And I've loved it ever since.
So you said you're a counselor. You've been a counselor. You started at 16 years, and your cousin was a camper there?
My stepbrother.
Oh, your stepbrother. How long have you been working with people who have special needs, intellectual or who have speech devices, if that makes sense?
I guess I started to be exposed to people with disabilities when I was 10 because that's when Ronnie became part of my family as my stepbrother. So I volunteered at Special Olympics and did had a little bit of exposure through Ronnie and his friends, and he had cerebral palsy and intellectual disability. But then my life really opened up at 16 when I started at Camp Jabberwocky, and I found I was so interested in people that couldn't speak because obviously they were communicating in other ways. After that, I started to do respite work where I could work with families, stay with their disabled child so they could go away weekends. And then I ended up going and getting my undergraduate degree in psychology because I thought I wanted to be a psychologist for people who couldn't speak. And then a counselor at camp, longtime counselor Madeline Way, told me about speech pathology and augmentative alternative communication, or AAC. So I went on and got my master's in that and have really specialized in working with AAC. Cool.
How long have you been working with people who have special needs?
Let's see. I started when I was in high school and college. I would babysit for children with disabilities. I babysat a deaf child who had visual processing issues all through college. And then I did the respite and, of course, Jabberwocky every summer. And then after college and before I started my master's program, I worked for 2 years as a one-on-one aide in the public schools with a young man with cerebral palsy who didn't have speech, and that was so much fun. And then I discovered about speech pathology and AAC. So I guess professionally, I didn't really start until after my master's program. So that was about 1997.
Nice.
Ever since then. Yeah.
And do you find it fun working as long as you have in this field? It sounds like you really enjoy it, and I don't want to jinx it, but you seem like you know what you're doing.
Thank you for saying that, Marianne. It's the most fun thing. I feel so blessed that I found Camp Jabberwocky at such a young age and got to meet amazing people like you. And I feel like the most blessed person to be able to go to work every day and not have it be a drag. Mm-hmm. It's certainly what makes me happy. I love my family, but I also really love my work. Mm-hmm. And it's just a dream to have the job I have right now. And I still get to come to camp in the summer.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you start going, and then as you start going to a place more, you feel like they're your quote unquote second family. Just Avi Nora always says, like, everybody at camp is like a family, and it's great that people have that connection, that like people can really trust one another and be able to connect to each other. So that's great.
Definitely. Yeah. The results of that longitudinal Harvard study they talked about today on the radio, they were saying how what's most important for people's happiness is having those relationships. Mm. And camp certainly is that, and I feel like every day goes by and I have some kind of contact with somebody. Mm-hmm. A lot of people will call or text or FaceTime or look on Facebook, and it's just camp is all around us all the time. And of course, I'm lucky enough to have Gabrielle living in my house right now, who's a long-time counselor, and my husband's been going since 1992. So yeah, we have a lot of camps surrounding us.
Nice.
Yeah. With camp, I wanted to mention too, you and I know what camp is about, and it's this amazing, magical place. But when I first started volunteering at camp, and as a teenager, people would say, "Oh, what did you do this summer?" And I would talk about camp, and then I'd get "Oh, you must be such a beautiful person. Oh, what a wonderful," like as if it's being heroic, whereas I'm going for selfish reasons. I'm going because it makes me happier than any other place.
Yeah. I definitely feel like it's, people have definitely built connections there, and I feel like it's a great place to bond. I really feel that people bond with one another when we're there, and I feel like, again, people can really trust one another, and you can really count on people.
Yeah, and you've taught me so much at camp. Just this past summer, you were so patient with me as I'm learning to do new things and making all kinds of mistakes, and you're just, "No, it's okay, Kim."
Even taking your husband to prom?
That was okay.
Good, I'm glad. Yeah. Yeah. So, how did you get involved with working with people with special needs?
I tie it to Jabberwocky, but again, my brother Ronnie, since he was a camper for 35 years, he started when he was a child, and then without Ronnie, I may not have found out about it, because that's really where it all started.
Yeah. And if I may ask, how old is Ronnie? Same age as you? Younger? Older?
I was 10 and he was in his 20s. He was probably 15 years older than me, and he passed now about 10 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. What is one thing that you like about working with people who have special needs, and why?
I think, to me, a lot of people with disabilities are just so real. Not as much, certainly with Ronnie, he would never worry about what someone else thought about him except that they liked him as a person. There's no putting on airs of how to impress somebody, regardless of the level of support needs. And I found the disabled community to be so welcoming to me, and that I can come in and be interested and want to help, and then people are very patient with me because what do I know? I don't have the same experiences. Yeah, and it's always wonderful to see the incredible strengths. Like, I work a lot with people who are completely non-speaking, and if they have to use a communication device where it's a very slow cursor, the scanning, it goes through, it takes so much patience, and people just have it all memorized and they can do it. What I think, to me, and I have ADHD, I don't think I'd be able to do scanning. The patience of many people, or if their speech is hard to understand and I keep messing it up. And I just think of a camper of many years ago, and he would just laugh and shake his head and say, no, no, and then he'd repeat it and never get mad. So it just...
Yeah, I definitely can connect to that. Like, there are some people at camp who use special devices, such as, I know Gabrielle has had a camper for many years who has a letterboard that looks complicated to use, but once like you start getting to work with that person, it kind of like sticks to you. Yeah. Is there anything that you dislike or would change about working with people who have special needs? And if so, how would you change the situation?
Sometimes I get very frustrated when I see all the disparities in what people are given for supports. One family will have lots of supports and another will have none. And especially you look at the school systems where, we're by law, until a person is 22, then they receive all the services they need as long as they have a good advocacy and set up, and it just works out well that way. But then at 22, there's so little support, and it's really frustrating to see that. And then to see people with physical disabilities oftentimes will just lose more and more mobility because they're not getting physical therapy they need, and many people don't find employment, and that part is really frustrating. I think that, and just seeing all the ableism where people aren't exposed as much as they need to be to people with disabilities, and realize these are full people and don't need to be talked down to, and just treated as just an incredible, diverse part of our community.
Gotcha. How do you feel like working with people with special needs impacts you? If it does impact you at all, it doesn't have to, but if it does impact you, how?
Oh, it definitely impacts me. I feel like it drives who I am, my work, and just keeps me humble every day because I realize there's so much, always more that I need to learn, study, practice, but also what I imagine someone's thinking or feeling, I can't know. So it just always keeps me in the student seat of knowing I need to learn more just by listening better, maybe talking less and listening better, and finding out what I can do to better help a person. Yeah. Or just to form relationships.
Yeah. And do you feel like working with disabilities, do you feel like working with people with disabilities impacts like other people, or do you feel like it's like hard to read other people?
Do you mean people that see what I do,
Yeah,
or?
so not only you, but like other counselors or like other SLPs, like people who work with the disabled. Like, how does it affect the workers?
In general,
Yes.
being a person who's working with people with
Yes.
disabilities, how does it affect? I guess it really depends on the person, because my dad passed away a year ago from dementia, and while he was in the nursing home, I saw many people that are underpaid, undertrained, probably are working two jobs. Some people were very caring and interested, and others just seemed to be, it's just a job, just moving my father's body around and not even warning him that they're going to move him and things like that. And I don't want to judge people, but I don't think everybody truly gets from it what we can get of how to just learn so much and experience the joy of really connecting with someone else and learning from their experience and growth.
Mm, yeah. It's definitely a gift to be able to go home at the end of the day and say, "Hey, I helped somebody today." It's definitely great to be able to go to bed with that feeling. But it's hard because some people like me who are wheelchair bound feel like we have very little, we can get around very little because we can't really get into many places as like somebody who walks can get into. So for us wheelchair users, we need like a ramp to be able to get into a certain place. But for people who walk, they can either use the ramp, the stairs, you name it. And it's just hard seeing like people who are able to walk and like they have so much more freedom than other people.
Yeah, when you invited my family to meet you for dinner the first time, and you said, "Oh, how about this place? Oh, wait, I need to call and find out if it's accessible." And that's not something I think about unless I'm going with a friend who's using a wheelchair. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So these
definitely
barriers.
yeah, it's definitely like one of those things where like you definitely have to think about your crowd and you definitely have to think about the people that you're with and say, okay, what is this person's capabilities? What can't they do? What might they need help with? So, um, am I going too fast or is this good?
No, no, you're doing great.
Okay,
You're a natural interviewer.
I try. What is one takeaway from working with people with special needs that you have learned?
There's just so many. I couldn't just say one.
As many as you want, Kim.
I think I try really hard to learn the patients that I see in many of my good friends with disabilities. Also, I think trying to be more aware of ableism and the power differential, like you're saying, of someone who is ambulatory can walk into any building they want, and someone who uses a wheelchair can't. And the ambulatory person, we don't necessarily even see the barriers until we're with a friend who's using a wheelchair. So I think it's helping me to slowly become more and more aware of the needs of others, and that that there's still way too many barriers in society, both physical and just attitude barriers. I remember a good friend of mine lived in DC, and we used to go to all the really great museums out there, and I think we were in Mount Vernon, and this was in the 90s. There was no accessibility. There was no elevator, and I think it was Washington's house. So I carried him up to the second floor and just sat him on the floor, and we sat there, and the tour guide came in and was talking to us all about the history of this fascinating house, and she just kept looking at me and completely not looking at my friend. And he wasn't using any speech, but he was clearly attending and completely there, and he's a person. Every time she looked at me, I just stared at him, looked at him, kept looking back to his eyes, and finally at the end she did look at him, and she looked very nervous, but then she became more comfortable as she spoke with him more. And so that's taught me, like with everything, when we try something new, we're scared and avoid, and that can make it look like that person's not interested in interacting with a person with disabilities, because we're all like that with something new, right?
Yeah.
So I think
I definitely feel like patience is a great thing to have, but I definitely have encountered situations myself where there are things that I can do by myself, but not in its entirety, like getting on and off my coat. That's something that I can do, but I need a little bit of help with. And so I'll be like, I'll go to get my coat on myself, and then somebody comes over and helps me, and they're like, "Do you need help?" And then I'll be like, "No thanks, I got it." And I feel like patience is the number one thing to have, especially when you're working with somebody who might not have all the abilities that a person can have. So I feel like patience is the number one thing that all people should have when it comes to working with people with disabilities.
that brings up a worry of mine of when I see, if you and I are at a restaurant and you're putting on your coat and then I offer, but do I wait long enough to hear you answering yes or no, or do I just start helping? Because in my desire to help, it can be really disrespectful to put your hands on someone or start helping if the person didn't give you permission or request it.
Yeah, I definitely think great to say, "Hey, I've been, you put your coat on, and like, it seems like you've been having trouble," or something along the lines of that. "Is there anything I can help you with? Let me know if you need any help with anything," like that kind of thing. My next question is, if you are in a situation where you see someone with special needs having a hard time with something, feeding themselves, trying to reach for something, etc., would you jump in right away and ask if they need help? Or would you just do it for them? Or would you wait a few minutes to see if they come to you for help?
I want to say that I would ever so patiently and respectfully offer and then wait. But I think if it's someone I was friends with and close with, I don't know if I'd be patient enough. Like, I need to offer and then pause and wait. But I'm an impulsive person and I want to help so much. For a stranger, I was in this situation last summer. I was at a bar in Cancun, Mexico for a conference for people with disabilities. and someone who uses a device and with an electric wheelchair drove up to the bar to order his drink, but no one had seen him. So I went right up to him and I said, "Do you need any help placing your order or getting someone's attention?" And it was because he had cerebral palsy where his head was moving a lot. It was really difficult to read his yes or no response. But we ended up having margaritas together, and Gabrielle and I, we had fun, got to know each other. But yeah, in that situation, I was very nervous because I wanted to help, but then I couldn't read his response. So I had to wait for him to compose a message on his device.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely hard for me when I'm talking to somebody who can't speak themselves. I want to let them know that I'm here for them, or somebody's there for them if they need help. I'm very cautious about when I ask people if they need help. The last question I have for you is, how long do you see yourself working with people with disabilities?
I hope my whole life.
Yeah.
It's definitely my vocation at what makes me the happiest. So as long as people will have me, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah.
Hopefully I keep contributing or at least keep learning.
Yeah. I see you working with people with disabilities at Jabberwocky, and Kim, you are such an amazing person. Between you, Gabrielle, and Mike, you guys make a really good team, and I feel when one person's not there, somebody else pitches in. I feel like it's definitely great to have that trait where you help, where you can say, "Oh, this person looks like they need help. Let me ask them if they need help." I really applaud you for that, and it is frustrating for me being a wheelchair user when I can't do things by myself. But I've lived like this for 25 years now, and I'm used to it. So
You're incredible.
yeah, thank you. I try. You are too. So I really appreciate you being on episode 1 of Disability Talk with Marianne. And if you happen to know anybody else who would like to be on my podcast, feel free to spread the word. You know how to reach me by email, by text, by phone call, if you had any other questions, comments, and I really hope to see you soon.
Great. It was such an honor. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Disability Talk with Marianne. I hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to subscribe and give me a 5-star rating.